My name is Mia, and I've always believed in the power of family. This is where our story begins, with my brother Alex and me living together because our parents were no longer in the picture. We faced our fair share of difficulties, but through it all, we clung to the bonds of family that held us together. Alex and I were inseparable growing up, and our connection only deepened when our parents passed away in a tragic accident. When I was just 19 and he was 17, we were left with nothing but each other and the memories of our parents' love. It was a tough start, but we were determined to make the best of it. Our modest apartment became a sanctuary, a place where we could mourn our parents' loss and lean on each other for support. Despite the sadness that hung over us, we managed to create a warm and loving home. I took on the role of both a big sister and a mother to Alex, ensuring that he had everything he needed to thrive. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Alex burst into the kitchen with an ear-to-ear grin on his face. He was practically radiating happiness. "Maya, you won't believe it," he exclaimed, excitement dancing in his eyes. I turned from the stove, curiosity piqued. "Believe what, little brother?" Alex practically bounced with enthusiasm. "I've met someone. Maya, someone incredible. Her name is Sarah, and she's the most amazing person I've ever met." I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. "Well, tell me more about her. What's she like?" Alex leaned against the kitchen counter, his eyes dreamy. "She's smart, funny, and beautiful, Maya. We have so much in common. I've never felt this way before. It's like she's the missing piece in my life." His words filled me with a mixture of happiness and apprehension. I was thrilled to see him so happy, but I also knew that love could be a complicated journey. "That's wonderful, Alex, but take things slow, okay? Make sure she's as amazing as you think." Alex nodded, his excitement still palpable. "I will, Maya. I promise." As the weeks passed, I watched my brother's relationship with Sarah blossom. They spent countless hours together, their laughter filling our home. Alex was head over heels in love, and it warmed my heart to see him so elated. But as I got to know Sarah, I couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of unease. There were moments when her smiles seemed forced, and I caught glimpses of a different side to her personality. She was quick to make snide remarks when Alex wasn't around, and her sarcasm was often directed at me. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, Sarah couldn't resist taking a jab at me. "Maya, have you ever thought about updating your wardrobe? It might do wonders for your style." I blinked in surprise, unsure of how to respond. Alex, who was oblivious to Sarah's biting comment, chuckled nervously. "Sarah, come on. That's not necessary," he said, trying to defuse the situation. I forced a smile and let it slide, not wanting to spoil the evening for Alex. But as I cleared the dishes later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Sarah. It was the beginning of a journey that would test our family bonds in ways we could never have imagined. As the weeks went by, Alex and Sarah's relationship deepened, and my unease about her grew stronger. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, and it was time for me to get to know her better. One Saturday afternoon, I suggested we all go for a walk in the park. Alex loved the idea, and Sarah reluctantly agreed. As we strolled along the tree-lined paths, I tried to strike up a conversation with her. "So, Sarah, what do you do for a living?" I asked, attempting to break the ice. She looked at me with a forced smile. "I'm a marketing consultant." "It's a pretty demanding job, but I enjoy it." I nodded, trying to find common ground. "That sounds interesting. I'm a student psychology." Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, and I detected a hint of condescension in her tone. "Psychology, huh? That must be quite analytical." I wasn't sure how to interpret her comment, but I brushed it off and continued the conversation. It can be, but it's also about understanding people and their emotions. Sarah chuckled, and it sent shivers down my spine. Understanding people. That sounds like a lot of work. I exchanged a puzzled glance with Alex, who was blissfully oblivious to the tension between us. I decided to change the subject, hoping for a more pleasant conversation. "So, how did you and Alex meet?" I asked, attempting to learn more about their relationship. Sarah's face softened as she recalled their meeting. "We met at a mutual friend's party. It was almost like destiny. Alex and I just clicked instantly." Alex beamed at her words, clearly still head over heels for her. "Yeah, it was like we'd known each other forever." I smiled at their obvious affection for each other, but couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. I decided to be more direct. "You know, Sarah, I've noticed that you can be quite sarcastic at times," I ventured. She raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "Sarcastic?" "Me? I'm just joking around, Maya. You shouldn't take things so seriously." I nodded, not wanting to escalate the situation. But my concerns only grew as time passed. Sarah's sarcasm seemed to be aimed specifically at me, and it became increasingly hurtful. She would make remarks about my appearance, my choices, and even my cooking. One evening, as I prepared dinner for all of us, Sarah couldn't resist making a snide comment. "Mia, are you sure you know what you're doing in the kitchen? This doesn't look like something I'd eat." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "Well, everyone has different tastes. Alex seems to enjoy my cooking." Alex chimed in, trying to mediate. "Come on, you two. Let's not ruin dinner with arguments." Despite my best efforts to address the issue with Alex, he remained blissfully ignorant of Sarah's behavior. I began to feel like an outsider in my own home, a place that had once been a sanctuary for both of us. One evening, as I was doing the dishes in the kitchen, Sarah confronted me directly. "Mia, I've noticed that you're awfully protective of Alex. Do you think I'm not good enough for him?" I turned to her, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "It's not about that, Sarah. I just want to make sure he's happy and that your relationship is healthy." She scoffed, her eyes cold. "Well, I think you're overstepping your boundaries. Alex and I are perfectly fine." The tension in the room was palpable, and I realized that confronting Sarah directly might not be the best approach. But as the days turned into weeks, it became increasingly clear that something needed to change. Sarah's presence was casting a shadow over our once happy home, and I couldn't stand by and watch it crumble. Little did I know that our family bonds would soon face their greatest test yet in the chapters that followed. As the days turned into weeks, my unease about Sarah continued to fester. It seemed that every interaction with her left a bitter taste in my mouth. I couldn't ignore the fact that she was becoming increasingly unpleasant, not only to me, but to others as well. One evening, Alex and I decided to invite some friends over for a small get-together. It was meant to be a casual, fun evening, but Sarah managed to turn it into a tense affair. She made snide comments about our friends, critiqued our choice of snacks, and even questioned our taste in music. As our friends left, I couldn't help but feel embarrassed by Sarah's behavior. I approached her gently, hoping to address the issue without causing a scene. "Sarah, I noticed that you seemed uncomfortable with our friends tonight," I said, choosing my words carefully. She sighed dramatically, as if my concern was a burden. "Maya, I just have higher standards. That's all. I can't help it if your friends aren't up to par." I frowned, struggling to keep my composure. "Our friends are good people, Sarah. They've been a part of our lives for a long time." She waved me off dismissively. "Well, you can keep them as your friends. I don't need to associate with people like that." I couldn't understand why she was being so abrasive. Her attitude was driving a wedge between us, and it was clear that she was isolating Alex from his friends and family. I knew I had to talk to him about it, but every time I tried, he defended her vehemently. One evening, after Sarah had left for work, I mustered the courage to broach the subject with Alex. We sat down in the living room, and I chose my words carefully. "Alex, I've noticed that Sarah's behavior has been changing lately," I began, hoping he would listen. He looked at me, his brows furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean, Mia?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "She's become increasingly critical and unpleasant, not just to me, but to our friends as well. It's like she's trying to isolate you from everyone else." Alex's expression darkened, and he crossed his arms defensively. "Maya, you're just overreacting. Sarah is just being herself. She has high standards, that's all." I sighed, feeling frustrated that he couldn't see what I saw. "Alex, I'm not trying to criticize her. I just want to make sure you're happy, and I'm worried that her behavior is causing a strain on our relationship." He shook his head, dismissing my concerns. "I love her, Mia. She's the one for me." I realized that trying to reason with him was futile. He was deeply in love with Sarah, and my words fell on deaf ears. It was becoming increasingly clear that he was under her spell, blinded to her flaws. As the months passed, Sarah's unpleasantness continued to escalate. She seemed to revel in making me uncomfortable, and her comments became more cutting and personal. It was as though she took pleasure in belittling me. One evening, during a family dinner, Sarah couldn't resist targeting me again. "Mia, I can't believe you're still studying psychology. What a waste of time." I clenched my fist under the table, struggling to maintain my composure. "Psychology is important, Sarah. It helps people understand themselves and others better." She smirked, her eyes glinting with malice. "Well, maybe you should use some of that psychology on yourself, Mia." I felt my cheeks flush with anger, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. It was clear that she was trying to drive a wedge between us, and it was working. I knew that the path we were on was leading to a breaking point. Sarah's toxic influence was tearing our family apart, and I couldn't stand idly by and watch it happen. Little did I know that the true extent of her impact on our lives would be revealed in the chapters that followed. As Sarah's unpleasantness continued to permeate our lives, I watched in growing concern as my once joyful brother began to change. Alex had always been a kind-hearted and easygoing person, but under Sarah's influence, he underwent a profound transformation. At first, it was subtle, a short temper here, an impatient word there, but as time passed, his change became more pronounced. He became irritable, quick to anger, and increasingly distant from me. It was as if Sarah's negativity was seeping into his soul, poisoning the very essence of who he was. One evening, as I prepared dinner, Alex came home from work in a foul mood. He slammed the door shut and threw his bag on the couch with an exasperated sigh. I approached him cautiously, sensing the tension in the air. "Alex, is everything okay?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Frustration etched on his face. "No, Mia, everything is not okay. Work has been a nightmare, and Sarah's constant demands are driving me insane." I wanted to offer comfort, to be the supportive sister he needed, but it was increasingly difficult. "Alex, maybe you should talk to Sarah about how you're feeling. Communication is key in any relationship." He shot me an exasperated look. "Mia, you don't understand. Sarah doesn't want to hear about my problems. She says I should just man up and deal with it." I bit my lip, trying to choose my words carefully. Alex, that's not healthy. You should be able to talk to your partner about your feelings and concerns. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. I know, Mia, but I don't want to upset her. She's been through a lot in her life, and I don't want to add to her stress. I could see the toll that Sarah's manipulation was taking on him. He had become so entangled in her web that he was willing to sacrifice his own well-being to avoid conflict. It broke my heart to see him like this. As the months passed, Alex's anger and irritability only intensified. It seemed that he was always on edge, and the smallest things would set him off. He began to withdraw from our friends and family, isolating himself more and more. One evening, after a particularly heated argument with Sarah, I tried to reach out to him. I found him sitting alone in the dimly lit living room, a look of exhaustion etched on his face. Alex, this can't go on like this, I said, my voice filled with concern. He looked up at me, his eyes tired and defeated. I know, Mia, but I don't know what to do anymore. Sarah and I fight all the time, and it's driving me crazy. I took a seat beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Alex, I love you, and I'm worried about you. You deserve to be in a relationship that makes you happy, not one that's constantly causing you stress. He hung his head, tears welling up in his eyes. I thought I loved her, Maya, but maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should have listened to you. I hugged him tightly, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It's not too late to make a change, Alex. You deserve to be happy, and I'll support you no matter what. But breaking free from Sarah's grip wouldn't be easy. She had a way of manipulating him, making him believe that he was the problem, not her. It would take time and effort to help my brother regain his sense of self and break free from the toxic influence that had taken hold of his life. As we sat there, brother and sister, in the dimly lit room, I knew that the battle to bring back the Alex I knew and loved was only just beginning. As the months rolled on, I watched in anguish as my brother Alex's relationship with Sarah took a dramatic turn. Despite my concerns and his own personal struggles, they decided to take their relationship to the next level, marriage. The news of their impending marriage hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't help but feel that it was a decision rushed by Sarah, driven by her desire for control. Alex, however, was convinced that he was making the right choice. Maya, I proposed to Sarah, he announced one evening, his face filled with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. I put down the book I was reading, my heart sinking at his words. Alex, are you sure about this? Marriage is a big step, and I want to make sure you're making the right decision. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a habit he had developed since his transformation under Sarah's influence. Maya, I love her, and I want to make her happy. She's been through so much, and I want to be there for her. I couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was making a grave mistake, but I respected his decision and offered my support. It was clear that he was deeply in love with Sarah, and he believed that marrying her was the right thing to do. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, and despite my reservations, I put on a brave face and stood by my brother's side as his best woman. As they exchanged vows, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. It was as if I could see the storm on the horizon, but there was nothing I could do to stop it. After the wedding, Alex and Sarah moved to another city, leaving me behind. It was a painful separation, one that left a void in my heart. We had always been each other's rock, and now that foundation was crumbling. Communication with Alex became sporadic, and it seemed as though he was caught in a whirlwind of his new life with Sarah. I missed him terribly, and the distance between us weighed heavily on my heart. One day, 6 long years after their wedding, I found myself in the same town where Alex now lived with his wife and their 6-year-old son. I had some business in the area and decided to reach out to him. I needed a place to stay for the night, and I hoped that our reunion would rekindle the closeness we once shared. I called Alex and explained my situation, hoping he would welcome me with open arms. After a moment of hesitation, he agreed to let me stay over, and I felt a glimmer of hope that our bond could be rekindled. When I arrived at their house, I was greeted by a sight that shook me to my core. My brother looked haggard and exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. His once vibrant spirit seemed to have been extinguished. As we sat down in their living room, I couldn't contain my concern any longer. "Alex, you look so tired. Is everything okay?" He glanced at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of weariness and sadness. "Maya, it's been tough. Sarah and I have had our share of challenges." I leaned in closer, wanting to understand what had happened in the 6 years since they had left our home. "Alex, tell me what's been going on. I'm here for you." He began to open up, revealing a harrowing tale of manipulation and emotional abuse. Sarah had become increasingly controlling, isolating him from friends and family. She had taken control of their finances, leaving him powerless, and the toll it had taken on their young son was heartbreaking. During the night, as I lay in the guest room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I decided to check on their son, and what I discovered left me shocked and furious. I found the little boy sleeping on the cold, hard floor of their living room, his small body wrapped in a thin blanket. I woke him gently and asked why he was sleeping there. He looked up at me with big, sad eyes. "Aunt Mia, I sleep here so I don't wake up Mom and Dad. They don't like it when I bother them." My heart ached as I realized the extent of the neglect he had endured. No child should be forced to sleep on a cold floor, isolated from the warmth and love of their parents. I carried him to his small bed and tucked him in, vowing to myself that I would not leave him in this condition. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. I called the Child Welfare Office and recounted what I had witnessed. The Child Welfare Office conducted a thorough investigation, and the horrifying truth emerged. Sarah had been abusing their son, while Alex, caught in her web, had stood by and done nothing. It was a nightmare that I couldn't have imagined, and I knew that something had to change. As the chapters of our lives continued to unfold, the true extent of Sarah's toxicity and manipulation would be revealed, leading to a pivotal moment that would test our family bonds in ways we could never have anticipated. The morning after my shocking discovery of my nephew sleeping on the cold floor, I knew I couldn't let this continue. The welfare of my brother, his son, and our family bonds were at stake. With a heavy heart and determination in my soul, I decided to confront Alex and Sarah. As the day wore on, I anxiously awaited the right moment to talk to them. It wasn't until late in the evening, after their son had gone to bed, that I found an opportunity to sit down with Alex and his wife. "Alex, Sarah, we need to talk," I began, my voice trembling with a mix of concern and resolve. They exchanged a wary glance, but nodded, sensing the urgency in my tone. We sat down in their dimly lit living room, and I wasted no time in addressing the elephant in the room. "I found your son sleeping on the floor last night," I said, my gaze locked on Alex. "He told me he's been doing it for a long time, so as not to bother you both." Sarah's face contorted with anger, and she snapped, "He's fine, Mia." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was not the Sarah I had known when they first met, but the years had clearly taken a toll on her character. I turned to Alex, who had his head bowed in shame. "Alex, this is not okay," I said firmly. "No child should have to sleep on a cold floor. It's neglect, and it's not something we can ignore." Tears welled up in his eyes, and he finally spoke, his voice quivering. "Maya, I don't know what to do anymore. Sarah controls everything, and I'm afraid of her." Sarah scoffed, her contempt evident. "Alex, don't listen to her. She's trying to manipulate you." I ignored her comment and focused on my brother. "Alex, you don't have to be afraid of her. You're not alone in this. We can get you help, and we can make sure your son is safe." As the conversation continued, it became painfully clear that Sarah's grip on Alex was stronger than I had ever imagined. She had isolated him from friends and family, and he felt trapped in a toxic marriage. In the days that followed, I reached out to Child Welfare Services and informed them of the situation. They launched an investigation into the neglect and abuse that had taken place in Alex's household. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the right one to protect my nephew. The investigation uncovered a horrifying truth. Sarah had been verbally and emotionally abusing both Alex and their son. She had manipulated him into believing that he was the cause of their problems, and he had been too afraid to seek help. The evidence was undeniable, and it was clear that they needed to be removed from that toxic environment. With the support of Child Welfare Services, we managed to convince Alex to file for divorce. It was a painful and emotional process, but he realized that it was the only way to free himself and his son from Sarah's control. The divorce was finalized, and Alex gained custody of their son. It was a bittersweet victory, but it was a step toward healing and rebuilding our family bonds. Alex expressed his remorse for not listening to me earlier, and I reassured him that our family's love and support would help them both heal. They moved back in with me, and together we embarked on the challenging journey of recovery. Counseling and therapy helped Alex and his son heal from the trauma they had endured. Over time, Alex's confidence and self-esteem began to return, and the warmth and love of our family once again became a guiding light in his life. In the face of adversity, our family bonds were tested and strengthened. The painful chapter of Sarah's toxic influence was coming to an end, and a new chapter of healing and hope was beginning. In the aftermath of Alex's divorce from Sarah, our family faced the challenging task of rebuilding our lives together. It was a process filled with ups and downs, but we were determined to heal and move forward. Little did we know that a heartbreaking discovery would shake us to our core. As weeks turned into months, my brother's confidence and self-esteem slowly began to return. Counseling and therapy played a pivotal role in helping him and his son heal from the emotional wounds inflicted by Sarah. I was proud of Alex's resilience and his commitment to being a loving and responsible father. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, our 6-year-old nephew, Timmy, looked up at Alex with innocent eyes. "Daddy, can I sleep in my own bed tonight?" Alex smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "Of course, Timmy. You can sleep in your own bed every night from now on." Timmy's face lit up with joy, and I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of relief and happiness. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to us. But amid the progress and healing, a shadow of the past still loomed over us. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to discover about the extent of Sarah's manipulation and abuse. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to do some digging. One evening, after Timmy had gone to bed, I retreated to the guest room where Sarah used to stay during her visits. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't ignore my gut feeling. I began to search through her belongings, hoping to find any evidence of her true nature. My heart raced as I found a locked journal tucked away in her suitcase. With trembling hands, I managed to open it. What I discovered within its pages was a chilling account of her thoughts and actions. Sarah had chronicled her manipulation and abuse in disturbing detail. She reveled in her control over Alex and took perverse pleasure in tormenting him emotionally. She had isolated him from his loved ones intentionally and had systematically destroyed his self. Tears streamed down my face as I read her cold and calculating words. It was clear that she had been the mastermind behind the torment that my brother and Timmy had endured. I knew that I had to share this journal with Alex, painful as it would be. The next morning, I sat down with my brother and gently handed him the journal. "Alex, you need to see this. It's Sarah's journal and it reveals the true extent of her cruelty." He took the journal with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, and as he began to read, his face contorted with a mixture of shock and horror. He read aloud some of her chilling entries, his voice shaking with each word. "I can't believe this," he muttered, his hands trembling. "I had no idea she was capable of this." I put a hand on his shoulder, offering support. "Alex, this journal proves that it was never your fault. Sarah manipulated and abused you. You need to keep this as evidence for your lawyer." He nodded, a fire of determination burning in his eyes. "I will, Mia. I want to make sure she never hurts anyone else like she hurt us." Armed with the journal as evidence, we sought legal action against Sarah. The legal process was grueling, but we were determined to hold her accountable for her actions. In the end, she faced the consequences of her cruelty, and justice was served. As the legal battle concluded, our family began the arduous process of healing once more. We found solace in each other's support and love, and our bonds grew stronger with every passing day. Timmy, who had been through so much, blossomed into a confident and happy child. The heartbreaking discovery of Sarah's journal was a painful reminder of the depths of human cruelty, but it also reaffirmed our commitment to protecting our family and ensuring that love would always prevail over darkness. Together, we forged a new beginning, determined to write a brighter chapter in our lives, one filled with healing, hope, and the unbreakable bonds of family.
If anyone had asked me to describe my life with Mark in one word, it would have been blissful, that kind of bliss that is so pure and simple, you almost take it for granted, like clean air or a sunny day. We met during our college years and something just clicked. I remember our first date vividly. Dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, where the dim lighting and soft jazz in the background made the evening feel magical. "You look beautiful, Ella," Mark had said as he pulled out the chair for me. I blushed. "Thank you, Mark. You're quite the charmer yourself." We talked effortlessly, our conversation weaving through topics as diverse as politics, art, and even our favorite types of cheese. It was the start of something special, something that, at the time, seemed unbreakable. Our wedding was equally as dreamy. I wore a flowing white gown that made me feel like a princess, while Mark looked dapper in his tailored suit. We exchanged vows under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights, surrounded by friends and family who couldn't help but share in our infectious happiness. "Do you, Ella, take Mark to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the minister asked, his voice tinged with joyous solemnity. "I do," I said, the words carrying the weight of a promise I never thought I would break. "And do you, Mark, take Ella to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Mark replied, his eyes locking onto mine as if nothing else in the world mattered. From that moment, I thought we were invincible. Our honeymoon in Greece was a fortnight of romance and adventure. We explored ancient ruins, dined in quaint little restaurants, and watched sunsets that seemed to go on forever. "It feels like time stands still when I'm with you," I told Mark one evening as we sat overlooking the Aegean Sea, the sky awash in hues of pink and orange. "It's a forever kind of love, Ella." "Ella, I feel it deep down," Mark had responded, his arm around me, pulling me closer. Life post-honeymoon maintained the same enchanted quality. We were that couple, always holding hands, stealing kisses, and talking into the wee hours of the night. Our arguments were few and far between, usually trivial things that were forgotten as quickly as they had flared up. A forgotten anniversary by Mark was remedied by a surprise date night. A careless comment from me was forgiven after a heartfelt apology. "Hey, we're only human, right? What matters is we love each other," Mark would often say, his words a soothing balm on whatever tiny rift had momentarily come between us. We moved in together, sharing a charming little apartment that was a testament to our combined tastes. A blend of vintage charm and modern simplicity. It wasn't just a house. It was a home, a sanctuary built on a foundation of trust and love. Or so I believed. We both had fulfilling careers. Mark was a financial analyst, known for his shrewd investment skills, while I was a nurse, caring for people, which gave me a sense of purpose. Our love was the glue that held everything together. "Life is perfect, isn't it?" Mark would often say as we sat on our balcony, sipping on wine and watching the world go by. "Yes, it is," I would agree, my head on his shoulder, lulled into a comforting sense of everlasting happiness. Little did I know that this fairy tale would soon turn into a nightmare, that the man I thought was my soulmate would become a stranger, and that my life would be flipped upside down in the most shocking way imaginable. Mark and I had always talked about buying an apartment, a space we could call our own and perhaps raise a family in. After years of saving, the moment arrived. We must have looked at dozens of places, each with its unique charm, but not quite it. And then we found the one, an elegant, modern apartment with large windows that let in floods of natural light. It had a spacious kitchen where I could see us cooking meals together, a cozy living room that screamed family movie nights, and a balcony with a view that took our breath away. Wow! Ella, can you imagine waking up to this view every morning? Mark said, almost in a whisper, as we stood on the balcony during our first visit, looking out at the sprawling cityscape. "I can, Mark, and it looks like a dream," I replied, already envisioning morning coffees and evening wines, enjoyed right here. So we took the plunge. The process was exhausting. Paperwork, loans, and endless planning. But eventually, the keys were handed over, and the apartment was ours. Mark's financial prowess had made it possible for us to buy it outright, leaving us with $300,000 in savings. Mark had a particular idea for that money. He suggested we keep it in cash, as an emergency fund, in a room we designate as the secret room. The room was a small space, originally intended as a home office, tucked away behind the living room. "What do you think? Should we turn this into our safe room? You know, keep the money, important papers, that sort of thing," Mark mused as he inspected the empty room. "It sounds like a good idea," I said. "A safety net is never a bad thing." And so, the secret room came into being. We placed the $300,000 in a safe, disguising it behind a bookshelf. It was our little fortress, filled with not just money, but also dreams, hopes, and a sense of security. Then came my moment of initiative, or perhaps indiscretion in hindsight. My nursing instincts always veer towards caution, so I installed state of the art video cameras in the room. The cameras were discreet, hidden in such a way that you'd only notice them if you knew where to look. I took it upon myself to set it up, thinking Mark would appreciate the extra level of security. In case of burglars or something, you know, I thought to myself as I completed the installation. I should tell Mark. The thought did flash through my mind, but the whirlwind of daily life, work, grocery shopping, social commitments, took over, and I forgot. It slipped my mind entirely. I mean, why would it be an issue? We were a team, Mark and I, partners in crime and in life. And what are teams but collections of people who have each other's backs, right? Or at least, that's what I naively believed. Little did I know that this secret room, a symbol of our safety and unity, would soon become the battleground for a shocking betrayal. In the whirlpool of daily chores and work, the camera detail evaporated from my mind like a trivial scribble erased from a chalkboard. After all, we were so caught up in our love, our careers, and our new apartment, the thought that this room, this safe space, would become a Pandora's box of hurt, accusations, and legal complications never even brushed my wildest nightmares. And so, the stage was set for an upheaval that would shake the very foundations of what I had believed to be an unbreakable bond. I remember that morning vividly. I was enjoying my first cup of coffee, the aroma mingling with the morning sunlight that streamed through our large windows. I was scrolling through my phone, looking at news updates, when I heard a noise from the direction of the secret room. It was a rumbling, a storm brewing. The door burst open, and Mark stormed out. His face was a tempest of emotions. Anger, betrayal, disgust. In his hands, he clutched bundles of cash. Our cash. His knuckles were white, his grip ironclad as if the money would fly away if he let go. He tossed the cash onto the kitchen island, his eyes ablaze. "Ella, you thief! You thought you could steal from me!" Mark spat the words, each one laced with a venom I had never heard before. "What? What are you talking about, Mark?" I was stunned, disoriented. My brain struggled to catch up, to understand what was unfolding. "Don't play innocent. You stole our money, didn't you? It's not where it should be in the safe." His voice was a cauldron of accusation and loathing. "But I haven't touched it. Why would I? Save your lies, Ella. I've already called the police. You're done." As he said this, I heard the distant wail of sirens. They were getting closer. My heart raced as the grim realization set in. Within moments, our apartment, our sanctuary, was invaded by uniformed police officers. They moved quickly, professionally, but their presence felt like a violation. Mark pointed at the money, then at me, his face contorted in a sneer. "Officers? That's her. That's the woman who stole my money," Mark said. His words etched with a finality that made my stomach churn. "Mrs. Ella, you're under arrest for theft," one of the officers said as he pulled out a pair of handcuffs. I felt the cold steel wrap around my wrists, a stark contrast to the warmth of my wedding band. "Mark, why are you doing this? This is insane," I managed to utter, still incredulous that the man who had once vowed to be my partner in life was now orchestrating my downfall. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me," he said, his eyes devoid of any emotion I could recognize. As they led me out, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My reflection looked distorted, as though I couldn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Could Mark not recognize me either? Was that why this was happening? But there was no time to ponder these questions. The drive to the police station was a blur, each passing moment a slide deeper into an abyss. I was numbed, still unable to fathom how a day that began so ordinarily could spiral into an unimaginable nightmare. My mind was a jumble of confusion, fear, and betrayal. But underneath it all was a glimmer of hope, because I remembered the cameras. And in that fleeting moment, I realized that while my sky had indeed fallen, I might have the tools to piece it back together. The police station was a world apart from the life I had known. Cold, sterile, unfeeling, every square inch of it seemed designed to break your spirit. I was led into an interrogation room, its starkness underscored by the glaring overhead light. It felt surreal, like a scene from a gritty crime drama, except I was the accused, and this was terrifyingly real. A detective whose name tag read Smith sat down across the table. He had a weathered face, a man who'd seen it all but had room for a little more cynicism. "All right, Ella," he began, flipping open a folder that seemed to contain the details of my now unraveling life. Your husband claims you stole a significant amount of money from him. What do you have to say about that?" "I didn't steal anything," I replied, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "You expect us to believe that? Your own husband turned you in." "My own husband is lying," I said, my eyes locking onto Detective Smith's, "and I can prove it." "Oh, really?" He leaned back, skepticism etched on his face. "And how do you plan to do that?" I took a deep breath. This was my moment. There are cameras in the room where the money was kept. If you check the footage, you'll see that I didn't take anything. Detective Smith paused, his eyes narrowing as he considered my words. "Cameras, you say?" "Yes, I installed them for security reasons. Please check them, and you'll see I'm telling the truth." "Installing surveillance cameras without your husband's knowledge seems suspicious, don't you think?" I intended to tell him, but forgot, I admitted, my voice tinged with regret. It slipped my mind, but the cameras are there for our security, not for any malicious intent. He scribbled something in his notes, then looked up. "Okay, we'll need to obtain a warrant to access this footage. But if what you say is true, it could significantly impact your case." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The cameras were my lifeboat, the one shred of evidence that could rescue me from this nightmare. The detective left the room, and I was alone again. But now the room felt a bit less cold, the walls less suffocating. I began to replay the years of my life spent with Mark, each moment now suspect. How had we come to this? What masks had we been wearing? Or was the man who pledged to spend his life with me a mirage, as fleeting and unreal as a desert oasis? As I pondered these questions, I found my thoughts drifting back to the apartment. Our apartment. In my mind's eye, I saw the secret room, once a symbol of our dreams and security, now a vault of deceit and betrayal. It was as if our entire relationship had been distilled into that tiny space, its every corner revealing a little more of the painful truth. Hours passed, each tick of the clock echoing in the empty room, each minute stretching longer than the last. Finally, Detective Smith returned, a mix of incredulity and grudging respect in his eyes. "We've seen the footage," he said, folding his arms. While far from a declaration of victory, those words felt like the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds. I hadn't misremembered or imagined installing those cameras. They were real, and they might just be the key to reclaiming my life and my truth, even if that truth was now stained with betrayal. The courtroom was buzzing when I walked in, the tension palpable. The gallery was filled with spectators, their eyes darting between Mark and me. Whispered speculations filled the air, forming a dissonant background score to what was already an emotionally charged setting. I took my seat, my lawyer by my side. I glanced toward Mark. Our eyes met for a split second, and in that moment, I saw nothing that reminded me of the man I had once loved. "Order in the court," the judge commanded, silencing the whispers. "We are here to examine the charges of theft brought against Ella by her husband. Mark, prosecution, you may begin." Mark's attorney, a middle-aged man with a reputation for courtroom theatrics, stood up. "Your Honor, we are here today to bring justice to a man who has been betrayed in the most intimate setting possible, his own home." He laid out Mark's case, painting me as the villain, complete with citations of our financial struggles and supposed motive I had for stealing the money. It was a convincing narrative, built on half truths and twisted facts. I felt the weight of the courtroom's gaze heavy on me, judging, condemning. Finally, it was my lawyer's turn. "Your Honor, we are confident that the evidence will show that Ella is innocent. In fact, she's the victim here, accused based on nothing more than the say-so of her husband." My heart was pounding as my lawyer signaled for the video footage to be played. The room went silent as the screen lit up showing the interior of our secret room, the safe in plain view. Seconds turned into minutes. People shifted in their seats. Some coughed, but the tension held them in check. And then it happened. The timestamp on the video showed the date and time when the money was supposed to have been stolen. And there I was, entering the room but leaving the safe untouched. The courtroom erupted into murmurs, the spectators in disbelief. "What is the meaning of this?" the judge asked, directing the question at Mark's attorney. Before he could answer, my lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, this footage proves that Ella did not steal the money. If anything, we should be questioning why Mark made such a severe accusation without any evidence." All eyes turned to Mark, whose face had gone pale, his composure finally cracking. The judge ordered him to take the stand. "Is this your secret room? The place from where you claim your wife stole the money?" my lawyer asked Mark, locking eyes with him. "Yes, it is," Mark replied, his voice shaky. "And you accused your wife based on what evidence?" I knew the money was missing," he stammered. "I thought she was the only one who could have taken it." "But you were wrong, weren't you?" "Yes," he said, almost in a whisper, the weight of his betrayal settling in. "Your Honor," my lawyer turned towards the judge, "we not only request that the charges against Ella be dropped, but also move to file charges against Mark for defamation and false accusations." The judge nodded, a stern look on her face. Based on the evidence provided, the court finds Ella not guilty of the charges brought against her. Furthermore, the court will allow for charges of defamation to be filed against Mark. I felt a rush of relief flood through me, washing away months of uncertainty, anxiety, and betrayal. Mark was led away, his face a mask of defeat, his eyes avoiding mine. And why would he look at me? He had tried to destroy me, to tear apart the life we had built together based on lies and unfounded suspicions. But as I walked out of the courtroom, the future spread before me like an unwritten book. I knew one thing: Mark had not destroyed me. He had fortified me. The experience had exposed not just his betrayals, but my strengths. And as I stepped out into the sunlight, for the first time in a long time, the world didn't seem like a labyrinth of deceits and hidden traps, but a stage for new beginnings. As the courtroom doors closed behind me, the reality of my newfound freedom began to sink in. It felt surreal, like waking up from a protracted nightmare. My friends and family who had supported me through the ordeal enveloped me in a group hug right outside the courtroom. "You did it, Ella!" my sister said, her eyes brimming with tears. "You stood your ground and you did it!" "I had to," I replied, hugging her tightly. "I had to not just for myself, but for every person who's been falsely accused and didn't have the means to fight back." My phone buzzed with notifications, texts, calls, even some media inquiries. Word had gotten out about the dramatic turn of events, the courtroom showdown that had upended expectations. But among the deluge of notifications, one caught my eye. The divorce papers had been finalized. Mark and I were officially over. Our marriage, nothing more than a page in the annals of my past. In the days that followed, I took it upon myself to reclaim my life. The apartment, once a sanctuary for two, now felt oversized and empty. I sold it, splitting the proceeds as stipulated in the divorce settlement. And the money, the supposed theft of which had set off this entire chain of events, was donated to a non-profit organization for the falsely accused. I could think of no better use for it. And then there was the matter of the $100,000 in moral compensation I had received. I invested it into a small startup focused on creating advanced home security systems. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I felt empowered turning a tool of my vindication into a venture that could potentially protect others. As for Mark, he served his time. I heard through the grapevine that his days in jail were difficult. The shame of his actions had caught up to him, alienating even his staunchest supporters. Once out, he tried to reach out to me, not in person, but through a mutual contact. "Ella, he wants to talk," the contact said, his voice hesitant during the phone call. "Mark said he's got something important to say to you." "I don't think there's anything left to talk about," I responded flatly, cutting off any potential for a continued dialogue. "That was the last I heard of him. It's funny, in the twisted labyrinth of life, you sometimes find yourself at crossroads you never expected. Our paths had diverged so dramatically that the life I once shared with Mark felt like a dream, an old, faded, discolored photograph that bore no